proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States.
Well, this week we recap the Republican National Convention, the unveiling of the Trump-Vance ticket, and the attempted slaying of the former president. Republican strategist Austin Barbour will offer his take on the GOP's climatic week and President Biden's prospects. And Governor Tate Reeves makes news on the wings of the Milwaukee Convention, with the 10 Commandments pushed in classrooms and more. It's a jam-packed edition this Sunday on Mississippi Insight. Good morning. Welcome to this July 21st edition of Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Donald John Trump was emerged from the Republican National Convention with a nomination, a vice presidential nominee, and a lot of steam in the latest polls. But Saturday, July 13th, the Republican former president was recovering from a bullet wound taken in an assassination attempt that left another man dead. From chaos to convention, we have a lot to talk about this morning. Joining me now in studio is 12 News' senior political correspondent Richard Lake, and Austin Barbour joins us by Zoom. He's a Republican strategist and a managing partner of the Clearwater Group. Austin, welcome back to Mississippi Insight.
How you guys doing?
We're doing great.
Thanks for having me.
Austin, you are a GOP through and through. Well, what are your feelings coming out of the RNC convention?
Well, I tell you, I've been to a lot of conventions, and I was not in Milwaukee, had some conflicts this summer. There's no question this is one of the most unified Republican conventions that's happened, in a long time. And that's a good thing because, under President Trump, when he got nominated in 16 and 20, the party wasn't as unified. Certainly was more unified in 20, but there's no question that in 2024, the party is unified. The party sees a great opportunity to take the White House back. And so there's a lot of momentum, coming out of Milwaukee.
Richard, you watched a lot of the convention, and your thoughts on what you saw last week?
I completely agree with Austin. It is that unity, and it is that momentum that they're hoping to bring all the way through November. You look at both parties right now and where they are. They couldn't be farther apart when it comes to Republicans coalescing around former President Trump, who's had his own issues that would, with any other candidate, might destroy a campaign. And now the Democratic response to President Biden, his more calls for him to drop out. It's really just stark contrast. That's the biggest takeaway for me.
Austin, was there any particular thing that stood out to you in this convention?
I think the unity, and I hate to keep using that word, but I think it's really important. Listen, the facts are that President Trump has not been someone who has been about unity in the past. He has seen that is the pathway forward here to ensure that he locks up this election. Now, so I think it is really important. I thought it was very interesting. His campaign team did a great job of bringing people from all different tracks of life. Last night we saw Hulk Hogan come to the stage as a kid from the 1980s. That meant a lot to me. But there's a lot of different kinds of speakers. It wasn't just a bunch of current elected officials or former elected officials. It was good, and certainly a lot has happened since about 6 days ago with the assassination attempt of the president. And for Republicans, we've taken all that in. We've seen how serious this world is, in case you ever forgot. And I'm just very pleased with the 4-day convention in Milwaukee and the momentum that it puts the Republican Party in moving forward towards November.
Richard, anything that you saw that stood out to you?
Really, just again to echo Austin, it's the unity, and it is the without a question support of former President Trump in this. Without a doubt.
1 week we saw earlier on was that this process was the direct control over the party platform by Donald Trump. It's the first one in decades not to include a call for a nationwide abortion ban, for instance. He leaves that to the states. He also wants to shut down the Department of Education. There's a running theme of an America now in decline and under threat. Austin, what are your thoughts about the platform, and will it resonate with voters?
Listen, I think he was very clear last night about what the themes are, the policy themes that he's focused on. You heard him use the term drill, baby, drill. Look, that matters across this country. If the federal government, the bureaucracy within the Department of Energy, if that can be eased up, which it was under the Trump administration, but it was certainly tightened back up under the Biden administration. If you ease that up and you let you let our country go and explore oil and gas. Those are thousands of jobs for folks who work in that industry. But you heard him talk about that. You heard him say no wars when obviously when Trump was president. And then I think the biggest one is certainly the border. We've, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you see that we just don't have a border right now. It's been overrun. Our border enforcement agency, those folks, they've been overrun. So I think those are some of the bigger themes. And certainly you have to say, look, do you think you were better off 4 years ago when Donald Trump was president, or the last 4 years under Joe Biden? I think most Americans would honestly say, hey, I think I was better off 4 years before.
Austin, a question I had for you was about President Trump's speech last night. He started out on a very unifying tone, and many people have said, he himself said that he ripped up the speech, after the assassination attempts, rewrote it again. What impact do you think that has had on him? And at the same time, he was still trademark Trump, aggressive, still in that sort of messaging. How will the campaign try to, drive that message home while also, I guess, being a change candidate now?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important questions from last night and moving forward. And it's a great thought by you, Richard. Look, there's no doubt, and he has said this, that he has this sort of newfound sense on what the meaning of life is. And I think we all would if someone tried to take your life, and they very narrowly did. And thank the Lord that did not happen, that he turned his head just a hair, and he was able to live through that experience. But listen, he still has to say, these are the differences between me and my opponent on policy issues. These are the differences of when I was president versus Joe Biden has been president. Some in the 24/7 news media will take that as negative. I really didn't. I thought his tone was really good, and tone matters a lot, particularly in a speech like this. So I thought it was okay. It was a long speech, and those are sometimes harder to get through, but he can't just help himself. He's always sort of going to get off of what the actual text is from the teleprompter. But I thought that was really good, and I thought it was a win for him.
Austin, talk about his pick, J.D. Vance, 39 years old, really hasn't been in politics very long. What do you make of the pick, and how do you think it will help the party?
I think he's going to camp out in sort of what they call the blue wall. We us SEC football fans like to call it Big Ten country, and Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania and Minnesota, and these states that are, potentially going to decide the campaign, decide the election. Appalachia. I mean, that's where this guy's gonna hang out, because that's where he's from. That's where he grew up. Young, energetic. Certainly, he's a guy that believes in the policy positions of President Trump, and we're going to see how he does. And I think they picked him because of his personal connection with the president, his beliefs in what the president believes on policy issues, but certainly, and maybe it's the most important, they think he can help them in those swing states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin.
And Richard, you were talking about that you thought, since they have similar ideas and views, that it may not help expand the base. Why do you say that?
I think it will. Point being, it's just another Trump, right? I mean, you think about balancing out a ticket. Policy-wise, they're very similar. But Austin, to your point, he's going to come in crucial in swing states, and also in conversations that I've had with Mississippi lawmakers from the federal and state level. They say that J.D. Vance's story, his upbringing in Appalachia, his family struggles with addiction, they think that will resonate very well with Mississippi voters, and even GOP Chairman Mike Hurst told me that he's a real example of the American dream being very real and working in this country, which I know a lot of people have had differing views on. And they say J.D. Vance, the fact that he's 39 years old and he's skyrocketed after working himself through Yale Law School, the Marines, everything. Now he's the Republican nominee for vice president.
Mm-hmm. Austin, how did the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania, how will that impact, or how did it impact former presidents, the prospects for winning this election?
Well, I mean, I don't know how you say it didn't impact it. And you hate to take something as serious and scary as that and try to politicize it, but you got to ask that question. And so I understand it. Certainly there's some moments from that assassination attempt, particularly afterwards, where he stood up and, he gave the let's keep fighting, that are going to go down in history as, superbly dramatic photos. And those will be photos that we will see from here to election day, and certainly from here probably the rest of our life, just as we remember the photos from the Kennedy assassination and the Reagan assassination attempt. But listen, what I think it does is it continues to put more pressure on Joe Biden and the Democrats. You see here a party in the Republican Party coming out of Milwaukee that is united and fired up, lots of money that's coming in, organization, and you see a discombobulated party in the Democrats who are trying to throw out the current president. And I think they'll be successful. I've said that for more than 2 years to you, Byron, is that I didn't think Joe Biden would be the nominee for president, and I do not believe that. We all saw that on the debate stage a few weeks ago. But the Democrats have 1 month from today before their convention starts in Chicago. And it's quite a mess in their party right now.
And speaking of Joe Biden, since you mentioned him, he's recovering from COVID this weekend. Do you believe that's the beginning of the end of his candidacy?
I think the beginning of the end of his candidacy started 5 minutes into that debate, when all Americans who were watching it, and there was 55 million who watched it live, and probably 255 million who've seen clips on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, saw. You probably you felt sorry for the man, but also more seriously thought he can't be president of the United States. But sadly, we all age, and sometimes we age faster than we want to, and you just can't stop it. And that's certainly the situation that he's in right now. And America and the world saw that, but he's the one who's got to ultimately make the decision. I've got to step aside for the next generation of the Democrat Party, and he'll have to agree to that. They won't just be able to throw him out or off the ticket without President Biden and his family saying, okay, that's what's best for the country.
Would President Trump prefer to run against Biden or another Democrat?
I think he'd want to run against Biden. But, you can argue that round or flat. Biden's a very weak candidate right now. 82% in a recent Harvard poll said, we want another president. It's a lot of Democrats saying that. But if he gets replaced, there'll be a fight to see who replaces him. And then trying to build a campaign for a new candidate in 90 days for president of the United States, that's a very difficult thing to do.
Richard, your thoughts on what's going on with the Democratic Party and possible candidates if President Biden were to step aside?
Sure. I think the obvious choice would, of course, be Vice President Kamala Harris. I don't think they would sidestep her in her duly elected position right now. But other candidates, of course, California Governor Gavin Newsom, Pritzker. I know there's been people have advocated for Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, but again, I think with these calls for President Biden, the mounting pressure and the defiance in his role, they're running out of time to make a decision to try and flip a campaign around this quickly, especially with an opposing candidate like former President Trump. They have to make a decision, and I don't see a world in this going smooth, I guess. From the defiance, the messaging would have to take a very, very quick turn very quickly, and I just don't know.
Well, what do you hear?
Also,
go ahead, Austin.
It's super important to remember this is gonna likely be a close election. That's just where America is. Yes, from an electoral college standpoint, Trump could end up winning by 100 electoral college votes. That's sort of a mouthful. But, America is still divided. And if they replace Biden on the ballot, the Dems replace Biden on the ballot, it will get closer. There's no question that Trump is the leader, is the favorite in the race right now, but it's going to tighten back up. And Republicans that I talk to know that. Okay, we know if it's Joe Biden on the ballot, yes, we're in a great position to beat him and take the White House back. But if he gets replaced, that they're going to find somebody who can actually debate Trump and try to deliver a message against him, which unfortunately for the Democrats, President Biden just can't do.
Richard, what are the Mississippi Democrats saying about Biden, and do they want him to be replaced?
Yeah, I mean, they've been calls for just supporting President Biden. They're holding the line here in Mississippi. Obviously, not a lot of room for a flipping of Mississippi to come, more than likely this election. So, again, just holding that line, the same tone as, again, majority of Democrats are calling for President Biden to stay.
Yeah. What else will you guys be watching for in this fall campaign? Because there's a lot of talk also about the down ballots when it comes to the House and the Senate. Austin, what are you seeing as far as the House and the Senate, and who might retain that, or will we see a split House and Senate, or will one party sweep both chambers?
Impossible to predict the House. It just is. I think when you look at the Senate, West Virginia 100% is going to go Republican. Nothing's ever 100%, but we'll go 99.9 that West Virginia is going to go Republican. So that's a pickup for Republicans. Montana, that's a Democrat held right now, very likely to go Republican. So I think Republicans will likely win control of the Senate. Worst case scenario being a 50-50 split, and it's just no way to predict the House. It just did. Republicans have an 8 or 10 seat majority there now. I hate to even try to guess that.
And your thoughts?
What I'm really interested to see is, whether or not President Biden drops out. We've seen a lot of calls from members of Congress, particularly in swing states, saying you need to leave, saying that they're worried about their political life if President Biden stays and has a poor showing on another debate or loses the election. I think that'll be interesting to see too. If he stays, if he loses, what happens? If he stays, if he wins, what happens? So I think the Joe Biden piece of this is fascinating.
Interesting coming out of the Republican convention, and we head out to the Democratic convention now. A lot of tone about unity, and a lot of voters said they want to hear unity in a calmer After a week goes past, are we going to see the candidates have a calmer campaign, or is it going to go back to the mudslinging and just going to ramp back up to getting mean and nasty?
I don't know. I really think it depends on what the Democrats do. I mean, I truly believe. I mean, it'd be really interesting to see how the Democrat Party can stay unified. Well, I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, there's no unity there now when you've got U.S. senators, members of Congress, governors who are saying, the president needs to step aside. So they're not going to be unified. And then if he actually does that, then as Richard was saying, are they going to choose the VP? Is it going to be a convention fight? Remember, let's go a little history lesson. 1976, the Reagan-Ford convention fight. You know which state decided? Mississippi. The late Billy Munger and Clark Reed were all in the middle of that, two Mississippi Republican icons. So Mississippi knows all about contested conventions, and that may be where we're headed.
It'd be interesting. Your thoughts, Richard?
I think it's up to both candidates. President Trump could easily take up a call for unity and make this a policy down the middle fight election. And the same
if he does,
said
he wins. Richard, if he does that, what you said, he's. I don't see how he loses.
And again, President Trump said it yesterday, Democrats need to stop calling, and this is President Trump speaking, me a threat to democracy, right? That in itself, it has become a pivotal part of the Joe Biden re-election campaign, saying if you elect me, we will keep democratic institutions in place. It's up to both. It's up to both. They could easily make this about the issues, and depends on who you ask on who has done that for the majority of it, but I think it comes down to both of them.
Hey, we're going to have to wait and see. It could be interesting the next couple of weeks to see what happens with the Democratic Party on this race moving forward. Austin Barbour, always great talking with you. Richard, thank you for joining us here. Governor Tate Reeves has endorsed the idea of Mississippi wading into the controversial waters of religious texts in public schools. He wants to follow Louisiana's lead after the state mandated that the Ten Commandments be displayed in public classrooms. Governor Reeves was asked about this at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee last week. At the convention, the governor talked about many topics, including whether he would support Medicaid expansion under a Trump administration.
Social welfare program. They actually rolled back some of the work requirements that were approved under the Trump administration. So that's one of the reasons that I think that we will not, I'm going to continue fighting Medicaid expansion because I don't believe it makes sense for either our providers or for our individuals. And so we're going to continue to work on bringing more jobs to our state and getting more people employed.
Our neighboring state, Louisiana, recently passed a 10 Commandments bill where the commandments will be displayed in schools. Is that something Mississippi will consider?
I think there's certainly an opportunity to do that in our schools. But I think, this country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and we shouldn't shy away from that. We should talk about that. And there are a lot of those who believe differently, and that's perfectly fine. But that's the fact is that is what our country was founded upon.
There is speculation that the governor is on a list for a cabinet position if Trump is reelected. But would he take it if offered?
So I think anyone certainly appreciates the speculation for what the potential next job might be, and I think anyone in their right mind would consider whatever is put out there. But the reality is, I really do have the best job in America. Look, being governor is a good job. It's hard. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort, but it's a good job.
Big thanks to Austin Barbour and our Richard Lake for joining us this week. We'll be back next weekend with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown from all of us here at 12 News. Make it a great weekend.